Oh, there you go. Good. Okay, let's call the meeting to order. And we only have 5 people here today, so the first thing up is County Council meeting minutes for the 8th of July. Are there any errors or omissions in any of those? Claus?
I'll move the minutes as, I'll move the agenda as presented.
Sorry, I should have done that one first.
Just end.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been a while.
Should have asked, I guess, if there was any additions. A little late now.
I have nothing to add.
Good. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Okay, let's try the minutes. Maybe I'll get to the right one now. Any errors or omissions in the minutes? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move the July 8th County Council minutes.
Okay. No discussion. Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. And the special meeting, July the 2nd. Tori?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move the minutes of the special council meeting of July 2nd.
Yeah. Any discussion? Call for the question. Those in favor, those opposed, carried. So this morning, our first order of business, we have 2 bursary awards to hand out today to Lexi Hornford and Peter Harris. I'd just like to say thank you very much for applying, and thanks for your excellent work so far to get where you've gotten, and we certainly hope that yours will help you on your way to your further your education, and we greatly appreciate you took the time to apply and are going to be good representatives of Lethbridge County. So thank you very much, and with that, we'll give you your presentations. Do you want to do the picture in here or out?
Maybe outside if that's okay. I
Okay.
think that would look nice.
If we do the presentations on camera, though, that'd be perfect.
Okay.
And then we'll do a picture
Sure, I'll
outside.
take pictures of both.
And I need to do now for here.
Let's go.
Yeah, okay. So who wants to be first? Well, congratulations, and thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah. Sorry. Okay, well, I checked the names. That's good, sure. I never looked in there, never thought of that. Congratulations. Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good, and we'll take a group picture if that's
Yes.
okay outside. Okay.
You're all gonna be in the picture.
Hi.
Morning, So before we move off that, I'd just like to thank very much Jen for your work and whoever helped you out through the process, and Steve and Tori for sitting down and going through the applications. Thank you very much. So let's move down to subdivision applications. And the first one up is 2021-0-134, the Brouwer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This subdivision application today is to subdivide a 66 by 196 title into two equally sized parcels, being 66 by 98 feet in size, and it is for Hamlet residential use. You may recall that this landowner had brought forward an application before, I think,
2016?
2016, but at that time they had kind of, it wasn't an equal split, it was, I think, 2/3 and 1/3, so it didn't meet the size requirements of the land use bylaw. So with this application, it's a little different, so they've reapplied, and I will let Steve go through the planning comments and the recommendation.
Good morning, everyone. This application in front of you is to basically split the existing title lot in half into two equal portions. This lot there on the corner is a bit of a unconventional Hamlet lot. It was created as part of the remnants of the original Hamlet plan and consists of some former road and lane area that have been closed and were consolidated into it. The lot contains a residence at the very south end that you can see there in the picture, and then there's some trees and a movable gazebo is up on the north side. So the north portion that we're creating a new title for is largely vacant, other than it just has the trees and the movable gazebo on there. So just you may recall from the earlier application, but when the municipal services were installed in Diamond City back in 2006, the landowner at that time prepaid towards the cost of installation of a water and sewer stubbins in anticipation at some time of subdividing the north portion of the lot in the future. As I mentioned, back in 2016, he applied to subdivide a smaller lot. As mentioned, it's about 1/3 of the size there. That application was turned down due to the deficiencies. So he's come back now, he's reapplied, which is a bit more of a suitable proposal, creating the two equal halves. With that, the minimum lot size in the hamlet is 50 by 100 feet, which is a 5,000 square foot lot. So they're creating a 66 by 98 foot lot, I should say. So that has an area of 6,468 feet. So they're almost 1,500 square feet over the minimum lot area that's required. So with that, it would require just a 2-foot waiver, I guess, because the one dimension is at 98 feet rather than 100 feet. So the applicant is asking for that variance consideration with the new proposal, with them being more suitable in size, and also with the consideration that that the servicing stub is back in 2006, that the county granted him that. So during the referral process, there's no objections to the proposal. None of the utility agencies require a utility easement. Since the package came out to you, two that didn't respond previous, we've heard back from Atco Gas and Fortis, and they have no objections or concerns and don't require an easement. So with that, with this new proposal being, at least in our mind, more acceptable than the previous one, I have recommended approval to you with the conditions of taxes being paid up and to date, development agreement entered into. There is an existing caveat registered on the title regarding the water and sewer service connection and the fees, so that if this was approved, you would have to pay the outstanding costs associated with that connection, and then that caveat could be removed off the title at that time. The third condition also kind of deals with that servicing connection fees to be paid, and then that a final plan of survey or subdivision be submitted for the registration at land titles. So the reason for the recommendation is that this subdivision is possible with the provision of municipal water and sewage in the hamlet. In 2006, the applicant provided a deposit and obtained a stub-in for future water sewer service there. In that regard, the subdivision authority would have to grant a 2-foot parcel size waiver to approve this application, as one dimension is at 98 feet, whereas the bylaw standard is at 100. However, that can be rationalized in that the overall dimensions, the area of the lot exceeds the minimum 5,000 square feet, as it's at 6,468 square feet. And the approval of this new application does align with the county's initiatives and strategies to enable and encourage residential growth in the hamlets. So with that, with this new proposal, if you would grant consideration for that 2-foot waiver, the recommendation is to approve it on that basis.
Excuse me. Are there any questions? So I just have one, and I assume all the numbers go in sequence. So that was a G4 being split into 3 pieces actually now. So how do you like when you go through the numbers on the rest of it? Has it got a different numbering sequence you use, or like how do you identify them?
That's assigned by land titles, so it's based on a block numbering system and then further breakdown of the block. So in this one, land titles will, when it's registered, will assign that in a sequential order they have.
So the G4 and 5 have nothing to do with it any? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, they, as they got the newer subdivisions, more recent subdivisions, they go with their more conventional plan numbering system. So I think they dropped the block G on these ones now.
Yeah.
So now it'll just be a typical block and plan number. But the G just indicated that this was in block G as a bigger area.
Oh, okay. Any other questions? Klaus?
Then I'll move that subdivision application 2021-0-134 be approved subject to the lot dimension waiver granted and the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Any discussion on that? Call for the questions. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And let's move over to community services. And G1.1 is bylaw 21-015, redesignations of portions of lot 1, block 1 plan. Oh, I'm not going to read all that. Anyways.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just get the map up here so you can see where it's located in the county. So this first bylaw that I have here for first reading is bylaw 21-015, and it is to increase the area for the business light industrial around the existing area around this Optimum Feeds parcel. So what they want to do is they want to add approximately 5.85 acres of a land to the parcel and rezone it to business light industrial. And it would be to the south. So the three landowners that you see on the screen here, the Ross, the Overeems, and the Optimum Feeds are working together to facilitate this kind of reconfiguration of titles eventually is what they want to do, and rationalization of the kind of business light industrial area along Highway 519. So the area that they're looking at adding is to the south. And it, as I mentioned, is about 5.85 acres in size. And if the rezoning is approved, then they would proceed with subdivision to reconfigure the parcels so that there would be, these three titles would be reconfigured, and this northern parcel would be split in two. So they would like to, they have already actually applied for a development permit to actually build a new manufacturing building called Optimum Bins Limited. Or it's Optimum Bins is the company. Optimum Feeds, I think, is just a subsidiary. So they want to manufacture bins on this site. So kind of a new opportunity in the county through the intermunicipal development plan that we have with the town of Nobleford. This does fit in terms of development in this particular area. We did amend that IDP in 2019 to include this as an area for kind of commercial light industrial. So that is suitable for this area. And so I think in your agenda package I have included the application and also kind of the map that shows where the area would be added onto. It's on page 7 of your agenda. Kind of gives you a better idea of where that area is looking at. One thing I just want to note is that they have, and some of you who have maybe driven by there have noted that they've started construction, or not construction, but they've started digging a fairly sizable pond in the back, and they did not necessarily follow the lines that they were going to have for their rezoning area. So I'm getting the surveyor to do a survey out there just to make sure that the areas are rationalized in terms of the zoning and future subdivision. And so once I have that, there may be a slight amendment to this at second reading of the bylaw, just to, they might have to increase it in size to the south a little bit. So but I will have that information. I just didn't have it for today. It was a little bit, they were a little bit late. I just met with them yesterday. But just so you know that there could be a slight change, I think by a half an acre or so in size. So not an awful lot, but just something that I just wanted to bring forward just so you're aware if I come back with a slightly different plan in September, that's what the cause was. And you probably have seen this pond that they're building. So. But with that, I would like to recommend this bylaw be approved for first reading, and if there's any questions of council at this point in time.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since you mentioned the pond, is that a storm pond for the one property or the potential two properties?
I do believe it's going to be probably multifunctional. I think it says for drainage, but also in terms of they would need to, for these type of industrial buildings, have fire protection also, and so typically they have these ponds in the rear so that they can have that on-site water, because obviously there's no municipal water lines that run here. So that's one way that they have, and we've seen that often. So Cortiva on Highway 3 has it, Bayer, used to be Monsanto on Highway 3, they all have these bigger ponds kind of located in the rear of their property. They're mostly for firefighting purposes, but we have been using, we have allowed them to also act as stormwater management facilities also.
So just a quick question. The white little slivers that are in the picture and the big one there, is that alkali?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. This sale area is kind of in this back part of this parcel here is in a bit of a low spot, so that's kind of where the natural water sits, and it sits right up against the CP rail line. So
Yeah.
they've I think they've created a couple of ponds in here just to try and mitigate that a little bit. CP has, not the county, but yeah, that's what those are. It's alkaline deposits.
Any other questions? Morning. Morning. Any other questions? If not, could use somebody to move first reading? Steve, which one? Ken? Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you. And do we have time to do G 1.2, re-designation of parcel?
I think so, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. So this next application, rezoning application that has been submitted is another one for first reading today. And this is for Green Prairie International, the property there. So up until now, the property has been zoned Lethbridge Urban Fringe. It never was redesignated to the industrial district. This property originally developed out in 1994, so before we had kind of more clear guidelines on rezoning in the county for industrial purposes. With the recent fire episode that they had here a few weeks ago, they came to the county asking to rebuild those structures, obviously, and at that time we felt it was important that we do have the correct zoning for the parcel, or else we can't issue development permits from the development authority side of things. So they understood that that was necessary. We've spoken to them about that over the years, that when they do want to do more development, that they would have to do that. So they have submitted their application to rezone the parcel from Lethbridge Urban Fringe to Rural General Industrial. And that will allow for the parcel and the uses on that parcel to conform to the county's land use bylaw, and allow them to rebuild and expand the operations on their site. So with that, I have recommended that first reading of the bylaw be given, and that we can move forward with the public hearing and sending out the notices. We're hoping to have both this one and the other bylaw to County Council for public hearing on September the 2nd. So any questions of council on this application?
So this rezoning will cover off all the other stuff they've kind of done too in the last few years? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. So this will ensure when they do apply for their future development permits for their permanent structures, that they have the right technical documents in place for their parcel and their development going forward.
Okay. Any other questions? We could use somebody to do first reading then. Dory?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move the recommendation that bylaw 21-016 be read for first time.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Don't know whether we'd have time to do anything else before the public hearing, would we?
Yeah, we only have a couple minutes, really, so.
You which, sorry?
We only have a few minutes.
A few minutes, so maybe you probably can.
I think we're okay to begin if you want to, Mr. Chairman, on the public hearing.
Okay. Okay, so the first public hearing is bylaw 21-010, and that's the Ramias subdivision, the area structure plan and bylaw for amendment to urban fringe to group country residential, and we would need a motion to go in to open the public hearing. Ken? Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. So Hillary, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this public hearing, as Mr. Chairman mentioned, is for bylaw 21-010, being the Ramias subdivision area structure plan, and also for bylaw 21-011, which is the land use bylaw amendment to redesignate the two parcels from rural urban fringe to group country residential. And they are both of the parcels are located in the intermunicipal development plan area that we have with the town of Colehurst, and it's just along Township Road 9-4, also known as the KIP Road, and intersects with Range Road 22-3. In the intermunicipal development plan that we have with the town of Colehurst, any subdivisions in this area were required to provide an area structure plan to support their application, so that there would be inclusion of a drainage study in there to ensure that the drainage systems were not affected by any future development. And in this case, the area structure plan just had to involve the parcels that are located within the area north of the former rail line, and then to the Ramias' 2 parcels. And this one did include the Tinsley parcel, just to kind of close that loop off in terms of making sure that the planning was completed for this particular area. So the application has been made for the area structure plan and the rezoning, and the area structure plan and rezoning do comply with the requirements that both the town and the county have agreed to in that intermunicipal development plan. It also complies with the county's municipal development plan and the county's land use, group country residential land use strategy. This application was circulated to all county departments, the town of Colehurst, and external agencies for review. No concerns were expressed with regards to the proposed area structure plan or the rezoning by those agencies or the town of Colehurst, and I have included those comments in the agenda package. The one thing that the town was they wanted to ensure that the drainage systems were not going to be affected in this area, because there can be some drainage concerns in this area of the county. The review of the application was completed by the Planning and Development Department, and the proposed redesignation complies, as I mentioned, with all of the statutory documents that the county has, in that the lands are considered poor non-agricultural, being less than 20 acres in size. The proposed subdivision would not fragment high-quality agricultural land. There are no constraints or conflicts with adjacent land uses. This area in that intermunicipal development plan has been designated for country residential development, and so any future development in this area would be similar in nature. And we have had over the years a number of inquiries from landowners in this area to move forward on subdivisions, and so I anticipate in the future we'll have more of those. The applicant also submitted a stormwater management plan as required, and it has been approved by the county's infrastructure manager. At the time of first reading, it was noted that there was a reference still in the area structure plan to the public utility lot on Lot 3, this being the southern parcel here, next to the former rail line. In order to ensure that it was clear that this would be done through an easement, I did request that the applicant submit a change to that, just stating that it would not be a public utility lot, but a drainage easement that would be registered on title. And so that change was made, and it is referenced in the attached document, the area structure plan, as submitted in this agenda package. So if County Council were to proceed with second reading, it is recommended that it be approved as amended to ensure that change has been made and that the drainage area be protected by a drainage easement. These 2 bylaws were advertised in the Sunny South News in the July 13th and 20th editions and were sent to the adjacent landowners. There was one letter that was received as a result of that notification, and they had voiced, it's the landowner to the north. He had voiced concerns with regards to the proposed area structure plan and the proposed changes to the natural drain. Right now there is a culvert underneath the Kip Road that goes from the agricultural land to the north, and it drains underneath the road and then through this property to this drainage area on that property, the southerly property. In the proposed plan, they would angle that, they would pipe that drain instead of having it as an open drain. And so the adjacent landowner had some concerns with that, just ensuring that it would be maintained is kind of more of what his concern was. So with that, I have proposed, or I have recommended that County Council read bylaw 21-010 and 21-011 our second and third time, noting that an alternative could be is if two alternatives that county council could refuse both bylaws. So the advantage to this with may be that it would alleviate concerns from the adjacent landowner with regards to the natural drain. Disadvantage would be is that this plan is this area is anticipated to be for country residential development, so it would not be adhering to kind of the policies that have been put in place through the intermunicipal development plan. Another alternative that county council could consider, instead of just approving the applications, would be that county council may postpone second reading of the bylaws and request that the plan be revised to ensure that the natural drain is not changed. This would address the concerns of the adjacent landowner regarding the changes to the natural drain. One obvious disadvantage would be that it would just delay the approval of the application as submitted. In addition, just some financial impacts. If the bylaws were approved, the future development would be taxed at the county's residential tax rate. There would be no additional costs to the county regarding maintenance or infrastructure for this development, because they would be using existing road networks and existing services, and the drainage easement wouldn't be in the name. It would be in the name of the county, but it wouldn't be a titled parcel. So it would just be something that would be on title to ensure that the area wasn't modified in any way in the future. So with that, I would put it back to Mr. Chairman. Are there any questions of myself?
Steve, go ahead, and then Claus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That southerly parcel for the drainage, is that more or less just a trap low? It doesn't continue on? Looks like the rail line would kind of stop it, I guess?
Yeah, that is considered a trap low in our database. I don't think I have a neat little one on my computer that I can pop up the trap lows. I don't think I have that here, but it shows kind of this, where you see that more green area in the south end here, that's where the water sits. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily drain out anywhere, so.
Claus?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for information, that rail line there is discontinued, is that correct?
They use it for tracks, like for car storage, but it's not an active line.
Okay.
So I think you've already sort of answered my question, but none of the water goes to the Wiggins or the Bant land?
No, this, Mr. Chairman, this parcel, the water there's no culverts underneath the track here.
Okay.
So it doesn't go down to the Wiggins Slough, which is to the south.
So the next question is, how long would this pipeline have to be? And would it have the same volume kind of as the natural drain that's currently there?
If you go to, Mr. Chairman, on page, let's see if I can find a page number. It's on, I can't find the page number. Oh, there it is. Page 19 of this agenda report is the map that shows how that drain what they've proposed for the drain. So it would go at an angle onto that one of the future parcels, and then follow where the natural drain is into that larger area to the south.
So it would go into lot 3.
Yes, that's correct.
So is lot 3 part of same ownership as 2,
Right,
4, and 5?
Yes, at this
Oh.
point in time it is.
Okay. So then would it become a registered drain if you're gonna pipeline it?
It would have to, yes, it would be a registered drain on title. In the name of the county, under the name of the county, just to ensure that if somebody did change something, we can go back on title and say you can't affect the drain. So that's the kind of the enforcement behind those types of, that type of infrastructure.
So then the pipeline, if it was I don't know what kind of volumes of water go through there, but would it sufficiently handle what it would as compared to what it is now?
Yes, they have to meet what the current drainage system is right now, how it drains the volume. So that's, Devin did review the application, and he had no concerns as the drain would be adequately sized to drain what is existing today. So pre and post-development flows have to be met as part of this. So upon subdivision, when they're putting in this drain, it would be inspected by the county to ensure that they would have to provide construction drawings showing the size of that drain, and then it would be inspected by the county to ensure that it met that plan and signed off by us.
Any other questions? I'll give you your opportunity. I will recognize you in a second, okay? If there's no further questions from council, I will open it up to the public, and those who wish to speak in opposition, you have the opportunity to speak. Please give your name and where you're from so that we can record it, okay?
You can have a seat right up there so you can speak into the mic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Dave Clifton, owner to the north. I've had drainage problems before on this quarter. From what I gather, it's 2 8-inch pipelines they want to put in. That is not equal to the county requirements to cross a road allowance or a crossing and pipeline size. If you go to the parcel to the east of me, there's an 8-inch pipeline, which was done by the Alberta government. It does not work. I'm a backup hole. I'll be a backup hole here. I want it left as a natural drain with no pipes. Everything's open, because it seems like to the north or to the east of me, it's getting blocked. And the county's got to remember how that road was underwater all the time. I'm the one that took the water off that road. I fought with the Alberta government, and they did a half-blank job of doing it. So I want it left as is, a natural drain, no pipeline. They can put the parcels on either side, I'm not objected to that, as long as a natural drain is left. Because it's okay with these, if somebody else will come and they'll block it somehow, and I've had enough of it. So the natural drains have got to stay. That's all I come to say, and I thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Clifton? No, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Yeah. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Last call, is there anyone wishing to speak, period? Any last questions of council? Seeing as there are none, could we have a motion to close the public hearing? Ken? Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you. Now, you've heard information from both sides, and I guess the opinion of the county staff is that the drainage would be the same regardless. But I do understand at times you can be overwhelmed by water, so it's kind of up to you guys to go ahead, Klaus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just a question there for the development and that the drainage that is there. What kind of problem would that give if we just left the drainage as natural? Would somebody be objected to that? Because it looks like we don't want to put a burden on anybody that would have to collect the water on their property because the drain will not be sufficient enough.
I'm not a drainage expert, Mr. Chairman, through Councillor Vanderveen, but just from what I would say that you could probably leave it as a natural drain, but that they would have to submit a revised stormwater plan to show how that would work on the properties. And then they would probably have to reconfigure how they wanted to do the subdivisions on that parcel, just to align more adequately with that. But Jeremy might have some additional information.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Vanderveen, for the question. For the drainage, for the engineering report that has been prepared and done by Hasegawa, I think it's Hasegawa here.
Yeah.
Typically for any overland natural drain, they essentially match up the volumes, essentially, and that's why it's got dual 8-inch pipeline versus like a single 8-inch as the resident attested to from when it is downstream. So that the engineering assessment essentially, and for that flow rate going through those pipes should match the natural drain, which would be part of what was approved by the infrastructure manager as part of this development plan.
Go ahead, Klaus.
What thing that concerns me here is that when we do have excess water coming, and probably with a downpour or anything like that, if you have a natural drain, it automatically would take more water out than that you have a constructed one that is of a certain size, because with the engineering, and then just tell me if I'm wrong, that they consider also that you have excess water all of a sudden through extra rain and stuff like that.
A typical culvert, just very much like any of our standards that we have, is not meant for, they're not designed for a 1 in 100 event where you have a massive flow rate coming at it. I mean, they're typically built for a 1 in 25 event, which should cover off on 99% of the normal precipitation events essentially in the area. So it's not overbuilt essentially to meet that requirement, because it's not necessarily I wouldn't say it's not susceptible to potential overland drainage and flooding, but it's not susceptible from a normal standpoint for normal flow rates to essentially come through that area. From the sounds of it, there has been previous concerns with that roadway as far as it acting as a natural abutment essentially for floodwaters that is coming through that way, and that's where there's that natural drain that is existing through there. The natural, or the overland drain that essentially exists there now would probably be essentially built to accommodate a 1 in 25, so there would be residual effects in any large rain event or precipitation event from winter melt or anything to that effect.
Go ahead, Klaus.
With that information, thank you, Jeremy. With that information, I would personally, I would like to see the natural drain stay where it is, because I think that we don't know if we're going to get the 1 in 10 or 1 in 25 or the 1 in 100 years. So I think that with that said, I think that if it wouldn't bother people too much, I would love to see the natural drain stay.
Hillary?
So just if that is kind of, if all of council would, is on board with that, I think the process would be is that in order to facilitate that, we would want to see what that would look like on a new plan, and for council's information too, and that second reading could be postponed until that was provided.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with Councillor Vanderveen. It would probably make more sense to keep it as a natural drain. I mean, I would say a smallish pipe, there's just more of a chance of it plugging and just creating bigger problems maybe in the future. At least the natural, it should just keep flowing all the time.
Tori?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I would agree with the previous two speakers. I think given the fact that the area structure plan and rezoning do adhere to the policies of the intermunicipal development plan and the group country residential land use strategy, I wouldn't, I don't want to entertain refusing outright. But as, like I said, as the previous two speakers, I would, under the alternatives, there's a suggestion that we could postpone second reading, and the plan be revised to ensure natural drain is not changed. I think that would also be my opinion as well.
So you would need a motion to postpone second reading for redesign of the plan. Is that correct? Or how would that work?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think if that's what you want to move forward with, that I think what I had said, let me just read what I had said. That County Council may postpone second reading of bylaws 21-010 and 21-011 and request that the plan be revised to ensure that the natural drain is not changed. So then they could essentially show a stormwater plan that would show the natural drain, and they could also present a revised subdivision of the area, just if they wanted to accommodate that on there. So that's, I think the way it was worded in the alternatives would probably be okay.
Okay. Klaus, did you have a question?
No, I'd
Oh,
like to
okay.
I'd like to make the motion that we postpone the second reading till we have a revised plan.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, let's do bylaw 21-013, or do you want to break for a few minutes? Or
It's up to you, Mr. Chairman. It does
We doing okay?
whatever your preference is.
because I heard last time we needed to have a few breaks.
No.
Okay. We need a motion to open a public hearing for bylaw 21-013, which is a text amendment to Lethbridge County land use. Clause? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Hillary, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this bylaw 21-013, includes text amendments to the Lethbridge County Land Use Bylaw. We had brought forward for first reading on May the 6th, and the amendments, I'll just summarize them. The proposed amendments include updating and clarifying land uses within the rural agriculture, rural urban fringe, Lethbridge Urban Fringe, group country residential, rural general industrial, and Hamlet residential districts. Just that over time we see some like where things need to be modified or that haven't been addressed previously, so we wanted to kind of make those changes. Addressing changes made to the Municipal Government Act, specifically to the Subdivision and Development Appeal process and the requirements for development permit notifications. Felt that was important to include as an update to the land use bylaw. To clarify the types of documentation that be required for a development permit application, clarifying the language around fences within residential areas, signage for home occupations, just making sure that the different parts of the bylaw were aligning appropriately. To clarify the language around development in flood areas, it was a little vague, so we wanted to be a little bit more precise in the language there. Update the land use bylaw to align with the federal regulations with regards to different types of cannabis facilities, and then lastly to update the definition section of the land use bylaw. I did send out these amendments to the adjacent municipalities as required in our intermunicipal development plans that we have with all of them. No concerns were received with regards to the proposed amendments, and the proposed bylaw was advertised in the July 13th and 20th editions of the Sunny South News and on the county's website. I did not receive any comments or concerns with regards to the proposed bylaws as a result of that advertising. So with that, the recommendation is that County Council read bylaw 21-013 for the second and third time. Alternatively, County Council may refuse the bylaw if if they feel like a more fulsome review of the land use bylaw is required. We could do that in the next year or two. One disadvantage of maybe not looking at some amendments in the interim would be that we continue to have regulations that might not be in line with other federal and provincial regulations, and that some components of the land use bylaw would become outdated. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I have had a couple of questions posed to me, and the biggest one seems to be, and I have no idea where it fits in here, if it even belongs, and that is when a permit is issued for development, are they not required to follow the permit? And i.e., the example that was given to me was if you are building a building and you say you're going to have a certain kind of siding on it, and then you just go ahead and put another kind of siding on it, does that fall underneath this, or is that something else?
It's not included in any of the amendments that have been proposed here today, Mr. Chairman. That part of, when it comes to if an applicant puts on their permit, it's going to be one thing and they do another thing afterwards. The county hasn't been particularly stringent in terms of the style or type of materials that have to be completed on a structure, just because those can change over time. Somebody could put on, an asphalt shingled roof when they start, and then decide later that they want to put on a metal roof. The county doesn't have control over what people do over time. If there was, say, a hailstorm and the vinyl siding got destroyed, there's nothing stating that they would have to put on vinyl siding again. That goes the same in any municipality, unless there are what we call architectural controls in place. So you may be aware, some of our communities, subdivisions in the county, say Edgemore Estates, Mountain Meadows, Vista Meadows in the county, have architectural controls that are put on title for each property there when it's subdivided. And so before it's subdivided, so that every landowner has to adhere to a set of rules, and usually it's governed by a homeowners association to ensure that those rules are architectural controls are being enforced. So that's where if you're in a community like that, then it's not the municipality who has to enforce it. It's through that homeowners association or sometimes a condo association where they enforce rules with regards to the style of a building. The county does include in the land use bylaw where the character of a building has to fit in with the area. But it's kind of more generalized. But I would say that typically the bylaw doesn't have strong reference to that. If you say you're going to do this on your application, we don't put it as a condition that you have to do that. So that's, but if that's something that county council would want to entertain, I think that would be something that we would have to review separately.
Okay, thank you. And the other question was on cannabis processing. They're not really sure. Does that include a retail store or not include a retail store? Or how, I don't know nothing about it, I'll be quite honest. So do you know, could you kind of
Yes.
answer that?
Yes, I can, Mr. Chairman. So with regards to the amendments that are proposed, this is just for like the nursery cultivation and processing. Retail is a completely separate use under the land use bylaw, which we have governed in a much different way, where we have restrictions on the location relative to institutions, schools, parks, that kind of thing, and we only allow it in, I believe, our rural general industrial district as a specific use. It can't be located just anywhere in the county. So that particular component is separate from this side, which is more, it's more of the growing part of it and the harvesting part of it, not the packaging and sale of the product.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? And I know we have nobody here, but I guess I should ask the question. Is there anyone who's wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? And last call, anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? And wishing to speak in favor? And last call, anyone wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none, does council have any closing questions? Seeing none, we could entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Tori? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, we can do second and third reading. Steve, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It all seems fairly simple and just might as well move forward. We'll move second reading of Bylaw 21-13.
Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And third reading? No, we don't need to, because we've already had first. You moving third then, Ken? Any discussion? Oops. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Yeah, we can take 5 minutes if you'd like now. Let's call the meeting back to order, and we'll move on to G 1.3. That's Planning Development Department second quarter report. See you, Steve.
See you, Steve.
Have a good month.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for the second quarter of 2021, I just wanted to give County Council an update on where things are happening within our department. So as the county's Planning and Development Department takes direction from the bylaws and guiding documents that have been approved by County Council, which include all the statutory plans, so municipal development plans, intermunicipal development plans, the land use bylaw, and area structure plans. And the department also manages the issuance of development permits, amendments, and updates to the land use bylaw, planning projects, intermunicipal relations and referrals, road closures and licenses, land sales and leases, and the enforcement of the land use bylaw and other planning bylaw regulations. So with regards to what's been going on in the second quarter, some projects that we've been working on and that you would be aware of would be the review and update of the Lethbridge County Municipal Development Plan. We have started the public consultation portion of the municipal development plan amendments. After meeting with council a few times, we started on the process of drafting or writing some articles that you may have noted have been put in the Sunny South News and on the county's What's Happening Lethbridge County app. I think haven't gotten a lot of feedback, but I have heard that it's been that people have been reading them. So I think at least in that regard, we're sending that information out and providing some good educational components out with regards to that particular project. We did put up the former Monarch Water Tower site. Lots, they've been put up for sale. To date, we haven't sold any yet, but I'm sure that will happen at some point in the future. And we did a review of policy 144, which was an old policy with regards to county supporting area structure plans that are being developed. We decided that policy was out of date, and that policy was rescinded as we put in the budget now some funds to help with the creation of concept plans and area structure plans in the county. And we did sell 2 lots within the hamlet of Turin. There was the 1 residential lot that was sold, and they have already put up a house on that site, so that is good. So one of those ready to move homes. So it's a new house, but it's just kind of put together on site, and so that was good to see. Yes?
What was the price of those lots again at Turn?
Oh, the residential lot was, I think it sold for $38,000, and then we also did sell one of the industrial parcels, and those ones are listed for $50,000 each. And so hopefully that leads to some future development in the hamlet of Turin. For the Development Authority, till the end of June, 161 development permit applications were received, and this is a significant increase from 2020 when we had only received 85, so it's almost double what we saw last year. A total of 148 development permits were issued, 1 was withdrawn and 2 were refused, and 10 of those were in circulation. So as you can see in my report, a majority of our applications are residential. That's typical for our county, and that can be additions, new houses. That's kind of what the residential category fits into, and that's followed by accessory buildings, then commercial and industrial commercial and industrial permits. That can be new construction, additions, or change in use. So in the county, we do see, especially with bay buildings, say like in Broxburn or in Rave or in Stewart Siding, we do see a lot of different uses flowing through, and we want to make sure that we're kind of accounting for those, making sure they're getting the right types of permits for that, for the type of use that they have. 36 agricultural permits were issued. Those are for farm shops, hay sheds, of that sort. And then the rest were divided between signage, home occupations, institutional, 1 recreational, and 1 demolition permit. For building permits, as you were aware, the building safety codes permits are issued by Park Enterprises, and the following permits are issued to the end of June: 114 building permits, 228 electrical permits, 125 gas, 80 plumbing, and 28 private septic disposal systems. Or sorry, these were submitted to them. They haven't all been issued yet. But they've seen a good uptake on those permits being submitted into them. So it just shows that things are starting to ramp up in terms of construction and development in the county. For subdivisions, County Council, acting as the subdivision authority, has approved 22 subdivisions till the end of June. For the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board, we have had 2 appeals of refused development permits in the second quarter specifically. One was sent to the new Land and Property Rights Tribunal, which was with the provincial government. That one was for a hydrovac facility that located in Stewart Siding without any permits. It was refused by the Development Authority, and then they appealed that to the province. We did hear back, so the province did uphold the appeal, so the permit was issued, but with conditions. So they have to adhere to Alberta environment regulations. They have to meet all the county setbacks, and they need to get I think a road use agreement. The other permit that was appealed was for a LED sign, animated sign out on Highway 3. It didn't meet the land use bylaw standards, nor did it meet the regulations that we have in the intermunicipal development plan with the city of Lethbridge. They did appeal that. That went to the local appeal board. The appeal was not, or the decision of the development authority was upheld, so the permit was not approved. With regards to road closures, County Council approved 1 road closure in the second quarter. County Council also has reviewed a number of redesignations in the county. There's been the approval of 2 of them, which was in June. And then we had first reading of Bylaw 21-011, which we actually had the public hearing for today. And also the text amendment to the land use bylaw. And also I just noted that we had 1 application that had come in but hadn't been brought forward yet, which was 21-015, which you heard for a first time today. Area structure plans, the Ramias area structure plan was submitted and received first reading, and now we'll wait to hear back from them on that application with regards to how they're going to amend it. And we'll see, there's no time on that, so it could come in next meeting, it could come in 6 months or a year. It's up to the applicant at this point in time. With regards to financial impact, I just wanted to note that the county has received $60,709.02 in revenue from Park Enterprise for the issuance of safety codes permits in the county. And if County Council would wish to have other financial information brought forward, just in terms of how we're doing in terms of other revenues, just let me know. I can bring that forward also. So with that, the recommendation is that County Council can receive this information for information. Is there any questions from Council?
So Hillary, how do you kind of, you gave out 148 development permits.
Yeah.
And then when you compare those numbers to what Park Enterprise does, how do you kind of match them up to see if they're kind of the same? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so what we do is, because with building permits, you don't always require a development permit to have to get a building permit. So what we do with Park Enterprises is that we track all the development permits and make sure that all the appropriate, so if they need a building permit, electrical, plumbing, gas, we track them to make sure that they've gotten those appropriate permits in place. And then there are times when, say, if they're doing an interior renovation or something, say somebody has an unfinished basement, they want to put in a bathroom and bedrooms and a living space. They don't need a development permit from the county, but they need a building permit. So that's where we kind of see there's usually more building permits than there would be development permits. But yes, we do track those to make sure that everybody's on, that they've gotten what they need in terms of moving forward with their development.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, could we have a motion to accept for information?
So moved.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. And Maddie, you're up next. And we'll start with Picture Butte Jamboree Days.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Council. So yeah, I have a report here for the Picture Butte Jamboree Days Parade. Council has been invited to participate in the annual parade, which will be held on August 21st, 2021. We will be including a float in the parade with staff handing out candy to parade spectators. The parade begins at 11 a.m. at Dorothy Daglish School in Picture Butte. They're also planning for a pancake breakfast between 7 and 10. The recommendation is that council choose members to attend the Picture Butte Jamboree Days Parade on August 21st, 2021 in Picture Butte.
Is there anybody wishing to go? Sometimes a safer question. Claus?
I'll go. And I got another question. I was talking to Tony Koch, and they were having trouble with Alberta Transportation trying to get insurance on crossing the 25 through town. So, and that was, so he did not know when that was going to be coming, because it was, you know, it was really affecting their moving forward with what they would like to do with the parade, of course. Have you heard of that?
No, I have not. No.
Pardon me? Oh, that they need extra insurance for crossing the 25. And so, it's really hard to find an insurance company that wants to insure that, so they were still working on that. So it seems to be a kind of a dilemma that they're having, trying to get that done. I don't know how that is in other areas, like in Coaldale. Do they go? Are they also on the like the big highways and stuff like that? They don't at all, eh? No.
No.
See, and that is Alberta Transportation requires the insurance, and that's why they're having some trouble with that right now. But hopefully they'll get it done in time. Yeah.
Anyone else wishing to go? I imagine Morris would. So, I guess we just need a motion to allow those who wish to attend to go, really. Tori?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would make that motion that County Council allow any member of council that chooses to attend the Picture Butte Jamboree Days Parade on August 21st, 2021 in Picture Butte.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the next one, Maddie, is Picture Butte, or Colhurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yep, so another parade here. Council has been invited to participate in the Town of Colhurst Party in the Park parade on August 28th, 2021. Again, the county will be including a float and handing out candy to parade spectators. The parade begins at 10 at the Colhurst High School. It's being held in conjunction with the Colhurst Park and Recreation Committee's Party in the Park event. The recommendation that council choose members to attend the Colhurst Parade on August 28th, 2021 in Colhurst.
Just want to go with the same type of motion? Is there anybody who wants to go to that one too?
Okay.
I'll move anyone wishing to attend.
Yeah.
Be authorized to do so.
Any more discussion? Call for the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thanks very much, Maddie.
Thank you.
Next up is the Oh, you're next up again.
I'll stay here if that's okay.
Yeah. Celebration of Indigenous Culture, September 11th, Ready-Made.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council has received an invitation to attend the Ready-Made Community Center's Celebration of Indigenous Culture event on Saturday, September 11th, 2021. The event will feature dancers, drummers, speakers, storytellers, and artisans, as well as the raising of a teepee to celebrate and bring awareness to Indigenous culture in our area. So a separate letter was also received from the Community Association asking for a donation of $1,050 to assist with the costs of hosting the event. I believe attached to your agenda package, there's a bit of a breakdown in costs. They have their expected expenses and revenues. And then I think what is left over is the donation that they are requesting. I apologize, on the report, I didn't have anything about the donations policy, which should have been on there. The request does meet the requirements of the donations policy, but that policy only authorizes $500 to be withdrawn from the donations reserve. However, if council would like to contribute more, the rest could come from council discretionary reserve. The community center has seen a decrease in revenues due to the COVID-19 pandemic, just not being able to host events and things like weddings and things like that to generate some revenue. So, the recommendation is that council authorize any member who wishes to attend the Ready-Made Community Center's Celebration of Indigenous Culture event on September 11th, 2021 at the Ready-Made Community Center to do so. And further, if council decides that a donation be provided to assist in funding the event, with funds to be utilized from council discretionary reserve, which I apologize, could have read donations reserve, just based on the policy.
So Maddie, just to make this a little clearer, I guess.
Yeah.
So will Ann be utilizing the $500 contribution, and then the motion you were suggesting would be to bring up the balance from council discretionary? Is that how that works, or?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, for the confusion. Like I said, when I did the report, I kind of forgot about the donations policy. So yes, the council can authorize $500 to be withdrawn from the donations reserve under the policy. And then if council would like to donate any extra, it could come from council discretionary reserve. I think, Jen, is that correct? Yeah.
Okay.
So it's up to council, I guess, how much you would like to donate, and then that would depend on where it would come from.
Okay. So let's maybe split this up a bit, and let's do the wishing to attend business first, and then we'll deal with the donation after, okay? So if somebody would like to make a motion to allow anybody who wishes to attend. Tori? Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, if you wish to make a donation, I think we need to split that down a little further. But 5 and 5, or 5 and 550, or however you want to make a motion. Jerry?
Just as Maddie alluded to, for the portion from the donation policy, the cap amount is at 500, essentially for that. So 500, and it would have to be 550 from the discretionary.
Yeah.
Discretionary.
Yeah. Tori?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seeing as this is somewhat of a unique event that I know on my time on council, I haven't come across this, something to this nature. And I think it's great that the Ready-Made Community Center and the Community Association has decided to go down this path and host something recognizing Indigenous culture. I would move that $500 be donated from the donation, what's the correct term? Sorry,
Reserve?
the
Donation reserve.
donation reserve, with an additional $550 to be allocated from the council discretionary reserve.
discussion on that? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you, council.
And the next one down is corporate services. SG 3.1, Coaldale Lethbridge Community Growing Project request. Jen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item I have here is with the Coaldale Lethbridge Community Growing Project. We received a letter from them with a request to have County Council consider waiving their taxes on 2 land parcels, both of which are used for the community crop growing project. The 2021 municipal portion of taxes levied on each of those farmlands is $1,712.48 and $435.16 on the second property. Council has donated $500 towards the Coaldale Lethbridge Community Growing Project in the past and for several years, as well as more recently, as you may recall at the May 6th meeting, Council also made a contribution to the Picture Butte Growing Project when they came forward with the request. So as per the letter received from Coaldale Lethbridge Community Growing Project, over the past year, the project group was able to raise over $189,000 locally, bringing their total up to $1.84 million over the past 14 years. And since 1983, the Canadian Food Grains Bank has allocated over $1 billion towards ending hunger around the world. That was included in their letter if you had a chance to look at it. What recommendation administration is bringing forward is that County Council donates $500 towards the Lethbridge, from the Lethbridge County donations as per the policy 161 to the Coaldale Lethbridge Growing Project. Couple of options that council could do is waive the taxes. So that would be the total amount of $2,147.64, which would eliminate the portion of taxes or costs incurred by the Coaldale Lethbridge Community Growing Project. The con to that would be it may set a precedent for future requests that come forward by either of the growing projects. Another option would be to provide the tax equivalent as a donation rather than as a tax waiver. So this provides the community growing project funding without waiving taxes. It is outside the donation policy amounts, so the difference would have to come from somewhere else. As well, it would exceed the more recent donation that was provided to the Picture Butte Growing Project. I don't know if council has any other questions other than we just are presenting those recommendations based on the current policy that we have in place.
So just a quick question. If you waive the taxes, do they don't get the 441 grant dollars from the federal government, do they?
I'm not sure how that program
'Cause
works,
if
Mr.
you give them the
Chairman.
500, it's basically the same thing. It's a wash. So, but I'm just wondering if you just waive the taxes, I don't know whether they get any money for that. So it's about the same either way. Ross?
I think that you're right there, that, if we just waive the taxes, it's not a donation that we're making toward that, so they cannot put that on there as a donation, so they won't get the 401. And like you said, for the $500, that would be the $2,000 that they're basically asking for too.
But that's just my thoughts, so. Well, we used to waive the taxes, and then we went to this donation thing instead, because they get a grant for, if you get cash, they get a grant. Or the government tops it up, I should say. Tori? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I recall dealing with this with previous requests, and I guess maybe moving forward, I don't know if there's any feeling from administration if there would be any value in having a I'm not sure if it needs to be a policy, but if there was something directing us, I think, likelihood, I don't think we're going to see more than 2 applications a year, but it is good to see that Picture Butte is now approaching us with their project, as well as the Lethbridge Coaldale project. But I would just like to see that, make sure that we're I think as the Reeve alluded to, just maximizing the amount that they're able to generate. So whether that's the 500 or I know the request is usually for the waiving of taxes, but maybe I would support the $500 donation this year, but maybe moving forward, if there was some greater clarity and maybe more of a defined policy as to how we handle these two specific requests, I think that might make things easier and also make it clear to the public, because I think it could be misconstrued by some that we're maybe not stepping, to use the term of the guy that usually sits here, stepping up to the plate. But as the Reeve alluded to, I think we are, and the fact that that money will be multiplied by the government. So yeah, maybe just I'd like to see something in the future that's maybe a little clearer.
Claus, go ahead.
So just one question about Picture Butte there. So Picture Butte received the money, $500 in April. Was that money for last year or was that for this year?
If I recall the report correctly, I believe it was for this year.
Okay, so then they could not come this year because they had their share. So with that, Picture Butte got 500. So to keep things simple, and I think that because it's going to be multiplied times 4, so it's going to be the $2,000. To keep things simple, if we stay away from the tax part of it, then I think that to keep it simple, that we just treat everybody equally and stick to the $500. That would end up being $2,000 anyway.
Are you making that a motion, Claus?
Yes, I can make that motion.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thanks. Let's do 3.2, business tax adjustments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in front of you, the report for the business tax adjustments. As per the business tax adjustment policy 165, there are some 221 business tax adjustment requests that have been submitted to the county. The deadline for those was July 31st. The assessor reviewed the 7 requests that were received, and a summary of each has been included with the report. The total adjustment would reduce the 2021 business tax levy by $5,495.69, and the total business tax levy that was issued was just over $1.5 million, $1,535,047. So as you can see on the attached, I'll just, I'm not sure what page it is. Sorry, I don't have my computer up here. There's just a summary included. I think it's page 3 of the report. Most of them are related to beef, either milk cows, feeders, or finishers. And many of these applicants have applied in previous years for the same reasons. They all fall within the 85% threshold that is required for an adjustment as per the policy. And in most cases, they just don't have either the capacity or are not maximizing the capacity as per their licensing. And therefore, they've made the request. When looking back over the historical, their numbers of those who have applied in the past have been consistent, that adjustment amount. The recommendation of administration is that County Council approve the 2021 business tax adjustment requests as presented in the total amount of $5,495.69. Oops, I have the wrong page there. I
So
apologize.
just on the process, they all pay it and then they ask for a reimbursement? Is that how that works? Or do they just pay the reassessment amount?
We do advise all of the applicants that the tax due date is July 31st, as well as the appeal date. So if they decide to leave it unpaid, penalty will be applied.
Okay.
If they pay, then a credit is applied and they're refunded.
Okay. Claus?
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is all, the reason for all this is that the county goes by the number of, from the NRCB, the numbers that they have a permit for, and then they have to show that they have to swear that they don't have that amount. Is that correct?
Yep, that is correct. And it's a sworn affidavit, so they're swearing that the information they're providing is true and accurate. I'll just add to Mr. Chairman, in a lot of cases, Les is pretty aware of those facilities and knows whether or not, you know, if they're saying they haven't maximized or don't have the capacity, or even in some cases haven't built the facility to hold their total number.
Any further discussion? You would need a Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that County Council approve the 2021 business tax adjustments in total of $5,495.69.
Any further discussion? Call for the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. And G4, Mountain Meadows slumping recommendation.
So this morning I'm here to present on behalf of the infrastructure manager changes to, or bringing back a previous agenda item to council in regards to the Mountain Meadows slough. Now, just to keep everybody up to speed on this one, Mountain Meadows is a rural subdivision on the west edge of Lethbridge, adjacent to the coulees. I will just pull it up here as best I can. Anyway, at the June 3rd meeting, it was asked that we bring back more information, and during the June 3rd meeting, there was a request for funding to remediate the slough problem that is starting to threaten the housing that is in that area, as well as the slough has progressed onto the shoulder of the roadway here recently. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Hillary. So at this time, we still needed to do further assessment work of this through the engineering company that we had contracted to do this, which was Tetra Tech, who was the original engineering company for the subdivision. So during the investigation that Tetra Tech did further to this is we had to, what this has is it has a couple of shear planes essentially for where the slough area has been created. So very common in the general area, and it's referred to as the Lindsay silts. So these two planes essentially are sliding against each other. Now, the one thing that we didn't know for sure when the engineering did the initial assessment was what was the actual depth of the shear plane. In the investigation that we did further to this to find out where the actual shear plane was, it was actually 2 meters deeper than what was previously expected. So that also accounts for the increase in cost amount to the budget total, which is now at $514,000 for this project. Now that is an estimate. There is of course a contingency built into that. There is a potential. This involves all complete engineered backfill as part of this. There is an option within that we see that is potential to save some money on this project, which is a drying factor, but I think we should assume that the full cost of the project would be essentially $514,000. So due to the sloughing, like I said, the increase in cost is approximately 20%. Potential alternatives to this is we could not complete any remedial work and continue to monitor this location in particular. There is the party that owns the property that is closest to the slough, which is, I can't see their names on there. Anyway, the party that is closest to the slough has a secondary engineer that they are working with for an assessment on their home, essentially for they're having some wall cracking and other things like that. The risk point obviously with this is that if we wait from a remedial standpoint, there is a potential that this could get worse, of course, or it could very much stay static. We're unsure essentially what that could be at the time. But because of the work that the county did do in and against the bank when they built the roadway through here, there was, you can see clear cut lines of where we actually removed materials. There is, from our insurance side, there was definitely a feeling that we were liable for a portion of this sloughing in itself. by disturbing the areas and whatnot. So anyway, going back to the alternatives, we could do no remedial work. So the pro of that is there's no immediate cost to the county. The con would be the additional cost maybe incurred in the future if the slough gets worse. So the potential with these kind of projects is always that, it's 500,000 today, you wait, and it could be 700,000 in a year from now. Or there could be a progressive worsening of essentially the conditions, which could further increase the cost. So the reasons for the recommendation to go ahead with the remedial work is the work is required to prevent further sloughing in the area and therefore minimize the risk of reoccurrence with the county roadway and multiple homes affected, and there are several homes that are down in the river valley off of this roadway. This project will minimize the county's risk and exposure to future liability.
Cost?
You came up with 514, weren't we at 400 and so much last time?
Yes, we were at 414 before. That was based on the original engineer's estimate, and then once we confirmed what those shear planes were, it was a further 2-meter depth essentially to where the shear plane was, which causes the increase in materials. The main reason cost is from the materials, the extra materials that we incurred essentially to correct this sloughing area, because it has to be, all the material has to be removed, and then you have to move GBC back into the project.
So one of the reasons that that we are liable for this is because we dug the road through there after that this subdivision was in place.
No, there's multiple liability portions on this, but the primary one is the fact that we approved the subdivision more than anything. Subdivision is there. It was approved by county council with a specific offset. The roadway definitely doesn't help the situation in any regards, and is a further additional liability piece, but the primary one is we are the approver of essentially the residential.
Okay, now, got a follow-up yet on the, you were mentioning there that the one house close to the area was getting some problems there with cracking. So are we going to be liable for that too then, or is that under something else? Because under the engineering, I mean, they would have some responsibility there too, of course, because we're just a couple of meters outside of as far as the engineering approved the project.
For this property specifically, or for any property in general, you cannot assert that even when you pour a foundation or anything like that, you can't assert that just because you see a problem next to it, that's the cause for the problem. There's definitely, there's a proofing period essentially as part of that. The house is within the offsets that were essentially set out within the building parameters, so the slough should, it doesn't look particularly good when you see that slough right next to a housing area if you're associating that, but it's not necessarily the cause. It could be a groundwater infiltration. If you look at the property, they also have a septic field that could be leaking, causing further damages. There's a number of different things that could contribute to their problem versus not just the slough.
The issue that I'm struggling with is that because we gave the permit to go ahead with subdivision, so now things are happening to that house, and who knows what else is going to be happening to any of the other houses. And if we're going to be taking responsibility for this slumping here, is that going to add to that we would have to take responsibility for the other ones too?
There's always a potential in the future that with any of these areas that we do approve next to any of these coulees or adjacent to the river valley, unless you have set a even further adjacent setback as part of your subdivision approval, there's always that risk point.
I would think probably the best example you might find would be what has happened in the city of Lethbridge, if it ever comes to that point. Yeah, well, in several locations actually, but yeah.
Yeah. Proximity to river valleys, as much as they're very scenic views, there's also a risk variable involved with that. And that's hence why we have, like even on this property in itself, it does have an offset value, which, you know, they're not allowed to build any further than they are. And this house is right literally on where that offset line is. And same thing with adjacent properties further to, in this whole area, you can see they do have a certain offset they're supposed to have, essentially from there. One of the things specifically in some of these areas for consideration is, you know, for future, and speaking to these for future things, is one thing to look at is also xeriscaping and those types of activities in these areas, so there is no further water infiltration that could, over time, further exacerbate these types of concerns and issues.
Yeah, I think this is probably a good lesson for us to watch out what we're doing with approving subdivisions like this. I think looking into the future.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the county have any of the aggregate materials that that's required for the project to maybe bring the cost down? I know there's still a cost to the county with the, if they did have the materials, but still it's not out of the pocket, I guess.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. We don't particularly have engineered fill. We do have some of the potential aggregate for some of the backfill purposes, but the majority of this is raw clay and general dirt fill materials. So I mean, it has to meet a certain specification as per the engineers, but this is basically just going to be locally sourced material. Like we'll look for a borrow source close to there. Some of the other stuff, like this has certain channels within it, which is going to be an engineer specified riprap material because it acts as essentially a French drain, is the best example I can give for that, and that has to be a purchased product. So, and that's all included in the engineer's estimate for cost. We would have varying degrees of that riprap available to us, but definitely not separated out like you would buy from a third-party contractor. Okay. Yeah.
Lots?
And maybe you covered that, but we probably do not have any insurance that covers any of this.
No. Well, we have insurance for if the house falls, per se, but we don't necessarily have insurance that covers, you know, natural occurrences. And I don't think this would not be considered a natural disaster type event, so there wouldn't be specific disaster funding or anything for that type. I think that's kind of where you're alluding to a little bit as well.
So this is a long shot, but if we let it be and something does happen to the houses, we have insurance for that. So would we be better off just letting it go? It's risky, I know, but just see what your opinion is on.
Look at that, the green grass, the two ones, and on the other two, there's nothing in
There is definitely a large risk with what you would potentially be proposing and just allowing it to run its course. I don't really want to venture. I could have all kinds of opinions on this. I'm going to hold you to it. There's always, anytime you buy a piece of property, there's always a risk involved. And it doesn't matter. Sometimes you don't see those risks, but I mean, you can look around and you can usually pick out a number of them. From a liability perspective, we're involved in this aspect because of the subdivision portion, because of the road position. So the liability is always going to lie a portion within us for this aspect. So I don't really have a good opinion on that, or it's a delicate balance.
Delicate balance. So just, I have a couple of questions for you. When the engineer does up a quote like this, what does the modified contract price versus the subtotal price mean? Like, I don't, because there's quite a difference between the two numbers there.
The modified contract price, and just, well, bear with me because I haven't, Devin's been handling the majority of this. I think the modified contract price is the, I'd have to do some calculations.
Is that
like-
without the 15% variation, like the?
No, the 15% variation brings you to that total contract budget of 441 plus your engineering services and third-party liability, which brings you up to your 513. The modified contract price, I think, is if some specific deliverables within there are mitigated. One of the things that we did talk about was the site occupancy days. Usually on the previous quote we had 12 days of site occupancy, and then they've increased that portion because of a little bit of the unknown essentially with this project, to increase essentially, so we're not, essentially when we estimate these things as well, we don't want to have to bring this back to you on multiple occasions. We want to say this is the best case scenario, or potentially sometimes a little bit further to the worst case scenario, in the hope that the contract comes essentially in under this cost point. So on that modified contract price, I can't speak specifically to that one in this particular context. I didn't go over all those finite details with Devin.
I just didn't know what the difference meant, that was all, so I just.
Looking at the amount, I'm going to guess that is, a lot of that is also the cost difference from the aggregate, or the engineered fill that we're gonna have to bring in addition to this. Because the original was right in around 414. I think it was, this contract has increased by about 100,000 due to that extra amount for engineered fill.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I think we probably need a motion to either proceed or. It's gonna get worse.
Well, basically, it's gonna take away the MSI funding that we could use for the other projects, right?
Currently, right now, I believe Devin said he is under, for the contract bids that we have put out currently, that we are doing fairly well as far as our project budgeting, essentially right now. So, yes, this would come out of and be funded through our MSI, but we do have a bit of a reserve built in that funding right now. Sorry, not a reserve portion, an unused portion, essentially, of that MSI funding.
Okay. And this would qualify for that kind of funding, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you want to do here? Steve?
I'll move the recommendation that council approve the Mountain Meadows Slough project with a budget of $514,000 funded from MSI.
Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, council.
And new business. Georgie, do you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just regarding a couple conversations I know we've had, and regarding regarding what some of our neighboring municipalities have had, I would like to make a notice of motion regarding a potential declaration of an agricultural state of emergency. My rationale for that, I know we've had questions, would be that if there is a declared state of emergency, I believe my understanding is that it enables producer groups the potential access to resources funding if the provincial or federal levels of government were to enact some type of assistance. So having said that, I would like to direct administration to gather information to support, to potentially support a declaration of municipal agricultural state of emergency.
And we don't need motions for those, do we, Larry? It's just for,
That's correct, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, no.
okay. Good. Okay, so let's move down to the next thing, which is Lethbridge County Council attendance updates. So on June the 3rd was Lethbridge County Council, on the 4th, Mayors and Reeves. And we don't have Mayors and Reeves during the summer, next one's in September. June the 9th, meeting with the CAO. The 11th, we had a virtual meeting, Tori, Ann, and I, with MLA Joe Cece. On the 15th, Municipal Development Plan Council Workshop. On the 15th in the afternoon, we had the Public Works Level of Service Workshop. On the 17th, Lethbridge County Council. On the 18th, I went on a tour with Minister Grant Hunter out to Green Prairie Hay Products. And it's kind of interesting. I didn't realize that one of their largest sectors of their business was actually food for rabbits. It's amazing how much they produce for Walmart is their biggest customer. In little bags, 1.5 kilograms, and what was it? There was one bigger, 3.8 or something like that. But it was just, I couldn't believe it. It must all go to the States or somewhere else. I don't know where it all goes. Anyway, and in the afternoon we went to Henderson Farms for their 100th anniversary, and the Grant gave them a plaque for their centennial year of being there. On the 23rd, had a meeting with the CAO, and the 29th was the Picture Butte Arbitration Day. And I think we should be getting the results probably in a week or 10 days from now.
They forecasted 6 weeks for a decision, so
Yeah.
it should be imminent, essentially.
Yeah. Are there any questions? Tori?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. June 3rd, County Council meeting. The 11th, virtual meeting with MLACC. The 15th, Municipal Development Plan Council Workshop. The 15th, Public Works Level of Service Workshop. On the 17th, we had a Lethbridge County Council meeting. 23rd, we met regarding the bursary review, the 2 bursaries that we presented this morning. The 28th was a Lethbridge Regional Waste Commission virtual meeting, and the 29th was a Southern Storm Drainage Committee Zoom meeting. And just a couple of notes from that. We were provided a progress report. We also discussed the engineering of phases 2 and 3, and the group decided to move forward with selecting an engineering consultant to provide engineering services for phases 2 and 3 of the Horsefly Emergency Spillway Project. The technical committee worked to recommend recommend who would be awarded the provisional engineering services contract. Sorry, my writing is not very good here when my hand was injured. Also, one of the, I guess, larger talking points was regarding the environmental impact study. So right now what we're seeing is the federal government is really clamping down on the moving of water. So within the next 3 months, the committee will know if a full environmental impact study will be required. If that is the case and a full study is required, it could add substantial time to the timeline, possibly up to 3 plus or minus years to the process. At this point in time, surveys, provisional route that has been prepared, working towards land acquisitions. If there is no environmental assessment required, construction could start as early as next summer, fall. Another big talking point of the committee was just regarding how the group sees itself moving forward. I think there is an appetite for maybe some professionalization of the group, where is there someone who is dedicated to the group in regarding the administration, where is it housed, how is it funded, those kind of questions. So there was a motion made at the time to bring back some findings to our next meeting, just maybe some potential routes forward, how we'd like to handle that, and if there is an appetite from the group as a whole to contribute funding / look at solutions towards having a more permanent and professionalized committee, as opposed to the somewhat ad hoc nature of the community the committee as it sits right now. So we'll know more at our next meeting. And that was my June.
So Tori, just a quick question on the movement of water. Is that because it could potentially be interbasin, or is it more just, did they give you an explanation?
Yeah, I think part of it is speaking to that, Reeve, is just that in this instance, you're taking water that was in the irrigation system, and then obviously the intent obviously is to deal with those extreme storm events and then turn that water back into the river. So I do believe that was part of the concern, but just generally it was outlined to us that obviously water has always been a sensitive subject, but just right now there is a heightened sense of awareness about water, water projects, and just an overall, I think, hesitance from especially the federal government moving forward on such projects like this. They really want to see that there's been some really stringent environmental assessment done. So I think that's just everybody that is dealing in water is up against that right now.
Okay, thank you. Division 3, Councillor Horvath. I'll do his Lethbridge County Council meeting on June the 3rd. On June the 15th, Municipal Development Plan Council Workshop. On the 15th, Level of Service Workshop. On the 17th, County Council meeting. Ken?
Lethbridge County Council on June 3rd, Municipal Development Plan Workshop 15th, Level of Service Workshop 15th, and County meeting 17th.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. June 2nd, Exhibition Park Board meeting. June 3rd, County Council meeting. 15th had a Municipal Development Plan Council workshop and Level of Service workshop. 17th, Council meeting. 15th had an Exhibition Park Committee meeting. 22nd, Community Futures, and 23rd had the Bursary Review meeting.
Claus?
June 3rd, Lethbridge County meeting. The 15th, we had the Municipal Development Council workshop, and we had the Level of Service workshop. 17th, we had Lethbridge County Council meeting again. 25th, we had a SAWA board meeting, and the 28th, we had a Lethbridge Regional Waste Commission meeting. And the SAWA meeting, as I have, I think, reported, the expression of interest has gone out through the through HDR, and so we're awaiting results from that now, and we're trying to push it hard that we get something done before the new election comes up.
Good. Yeah, might as well do more. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Just a question on SAWA. Why is it a push because of election? Elections, people would change every election. If there was a manager in place, it would just continue on like any other business or anything like that.
The push for it is actually, there's a lot of them, a lot of councillors that are not going to be running anymore, and there's been a lot of history in the whole thing that we are where we are today. And if we're going to miss, and we're going to miss quite a few of them that are not, like I said, not going to be running again. So, and that's why we're trying to get this done as quickly as possible. And plus, I think that it's about time that we get get things moving a little faster, because in my opinion, it's not going nearly fast enough. I think we could have done a better job on that.
Any other questions? And Morris's, June the 3rd was county council meeting. The 15th was the municipal development plan workshop in the morning, and in the afternoon, level of service. And the 17th was county council meeting. And I guess that's it. We need a motion to accept those, Larry?
Optional, Mr. Chairman. I think
Okay.
historically, council does do that. So
Okay.
for consistency, it would be a good idea.
Somebody want to move that? Okay, any further discussion? Call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. And I believe that's it. We could have a motion to adjourn.
Who's gonna do that, Morris?
Yeah, I know. Somebody else is going to have to do it today. Well, don't everybody jump up at once, you know. Dory? All in favor? Carried. Oh, hell, I forgot to ask. Is anybody opposed? Thank you.
We should have